Hi everybody. Yeah, as Matthew said, please make sure if you can keep your cameras on. What we're going to do is Matthew and I will run through a few slides and then we'll open it up for questions. Happy to take questions on the chat in the Zoom or if you just take yourself on mute and ask away. If somebody is talking or answering a question and you want to put your hand up, please do also that on Zoom, because then we'll make sure we call you in when we have finished with whatever question we are answering at the time. So let us begin. Thank you first of all for taking the time to out of your day to join us on Zoom. We'll just do karakia to start. So a familiar one. So if you do know it, feel free to join in. Sometimes it can always be a bit funny when people are speaking at different times, but keep yourself, if you want to join and take yourself off mute, all good, or you can join in at home on mute. So let us begin. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi Ākina te atakura. He tio. He hoka. He hauhonga. Tihe maurio. Kia ora. So as we said, we're going to run through a bit of a slide pack now, which we will also share after the call. So you have it all there. My name is Ākina. I'm the Chief Executive of the Ākina Foundation, and it is my immense privilege to share this Zoom space with my good friend Matthew Luxon, who will be my co-presenter today. So we have I've got a bunch of slides we'll share across both of us, and then obviously we'll be available to take any questions, and also if there's any of the curly ones, we may call on some of our chums who are also on the call, who've been part of this journey, to pop in and say a few words as well. So what we will be covering today is all around the Impact Initiative. It has also been known as the Social Enterprise Sector Development Program, which is a really boring title, so we named it the Impact Initiative for a bit of flair, but we'll be talking about what has been achieved, what is the program, and now what, so now that the program has finished at the end of March. So relax, hopefully you've got a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and we'll get stuck into it. So the sector, sorry, go Matthew, up to you.
Yeah, so folks, this program started in April 3 years ago, so what's that, 2018, and in the time we've been going, we've had 3 ministers that have been responsible for the program. So the program was commissioned by Department of Internal Affairs on behalf of the New Zealand government, and they contracted Ākina to deliver the program, and Ākina partnered with CENT in that delivery. So CENT is the Community Enterprise Network Trust. It trades as the Zero Waste Network. One of the board members, Cliff Cohen's here today, and we will also work very closely with the Community Energy Network and Environment Hubs Aotearoa. So throughout the program, we've had 3 wonderful ministers who have all been really engaged and easy to connect with and work with on the program and on the deliverables as we've gone our way through. So the 3 priorities that government and why government was keen to do this and what they wanted to get out of it was this desire to find out what government could do to help create the conditions for social enterprise to flourish in New Zealand. And clearly we've got a great social enterprise, impact enterprise scene here, and it's got a long and deep history in Aotearoa, but this was about seeing what could help that go further. The second one was to try to work out how is social enterprise contributing to the government's goals, which are generally aligned. You know, the goals around social and environmental goals that many of us share. And then the last one, that government wanted to know, it wanted to be able to articulate what it needed to do next in order to keep the movement or the scene going. So those were the three goals that we were tasked with through this program that we needed to try to achieve. And I guess why would a government be interested in this? And the answer is simply that if, we've got complex problems in the world, clearly, and complex solutions are needed to solve and address those complex problems. And so, the social enterprise sector is obviously clearly a fantastic, one of the many fantastic mechanisms to do that. And so, yeah, this, as the slide says, the social enterprise sector sits within that New Zealand economy, and so its impact is beyond what we're doing on our own. So the enterprises that we all run or are involved in clearly have impact, but as a collective, we're having an impact beyond our organizations or even our ones joined up. So ultimately trying to, we're aligned, trying to improve the world in which we live in. So it's the next slide there. So the program kicked off, and we, it was a funny time when we started, and some of you will remember we had the World Social Enterprise Forum in Christchurch, which was amazing. That's when the contract was out for tender. We had the elections straight after that. And so we then had a change of government. And so this program kicked off with, even though it had been conceived by the previous government, it kicked off with the new coalition government that we had in 2017. And so it started in April 2018 officially. And the first year was really about trying to find out what is going to be the most useful thing particularly for practitioners. How are we going to, what should we focus on? And so we looked at a whole bunch of things. And I think we had about 25 work streams that first year, trying to understand what is it that's going to be most useful. And I'll talk more about this later. We're getting a lot of feedback from the sector around what you all thought would be more useful. And so then in year two, we were able to target, and we targeted 4 key areas, and we started delivering on in these 4 places, which we'll talk about shortly as well. And then in the year 3, it was about taking the learnings from that year of delivery in year 2 and trying to make sense of that, and trying to, like I say, help government understand what needs to, or what could be helpful next for our sector. Along the way, I had the privilege of being the sector engagement lead. And so particularly in those first 2 years before COVID cut our travel plans significantly, we were out and about doing a bunch of kitchen table talks. So that was one of the key mechanisms we used for trying to connect with the sector. We felt that clearly across the country, there's these amazing social enterprises who know their communities really well. The best thing we could do was come and just have a chat around someone's kitchen table. So I sat around Barry's kitchen table in Wanaka, and he organised for a bunch of his connections there. I sat around Stephen's boardroom table in Parryfields and Christchurch, and Cliff's and Kaiataia, and everywhere in between. And that was a great way. Well, I felt it was a good way to do it, because we were able to have these conversations at a very just informal, direct level, and chat about what was going on. So there's that next slide, Lou or Ed. So that happened. Then the second thing that we did is we set up a sector working group, and we formed that with a bunch of people that are actively involved in running social enterprises. So some of them are on or involved in social enterprises. So Beatrice Whangoina is here today, Cliff Colquhoun, Gareth Cartwright from the Community Energy Network. We had Liam Clevey from Levin, many of you know, amazing young social entrepreneur. Shay Wright, working in the Māori enterprise space. So we had community enterprise, people working in community enterprise, people working in Māori and Pacifica enterprise, and people in youth, and then people in more than profit enterprises as well. So so we had that as a key mechanism, and we met probably every 6 weeks to about every 6 weeks, and that group was there to help be a resource, a very direct resource as to what's going to be helpful, as well as them providing some guidance on the program as a whole. Then within these 4 work streams, which we'll get to shortly, we had obviously engagement happening. So in the capability development that we were trying to do, we had this regional hubs pilot, and many of you here today are involved in that, and we're involved in that. That's turned into a network of community-led enterprise development agencies. And then we had the Impact Investment Readiness program, and there was a whole lot of engagement happening involved in that as well, and likewise with Impact so each of those and procurement. So each of those streams were engaging on their own. And then beyond that, we had the other opportunities to participate. Like we had a big survey that went out. We had the Aotearoa Social Enterprise Forum in the Wellington Zoo, which was amazing. We had the Aotearoa conversations that happened at the end of the Social Enterprise World Forum, and then obviously this World Social Enterprise Forum as well. So yeah, so there's been we've been very fortunate, and that's one of the reasons we're obviously keen to connect today and just report back on what the outcome of all that engagement has been. Lou.
So thanks, Matthew. So I'll get stuck into kind of the highlights of the program itself, and these are a collection of things. It's definitely a very long list, but we'll run through the highlights pretty quickly. I think as Matthew has talked about, we did have 5 key work streams really, if you think also about the sector engagement and leadership space. And many of these things are actually levers for social enterprise and community enterprise, impact enterprise, to be able to be valued at an economic level. So when you think about things like social procurement and impact investing, these are conditions that if they exist, social enterprises can thrive because they can access markets and capital where their impact is valued. So a lot of work has been done in the social procurement space in particular, not only within this program, but also key partners in this space. Amatai are focusing on Māori and Pacifica diversity through procurement. PBT are doing a lot of work in this space also. And we really see a significant opportunity to not only put social enterprise at the heart of social procurement, but really build the capability of those buyers at an economic level who are looking to buy goods and services from organisations that deliver, in addition to those goods and services, impact, social and environmental and cultural impact. So through the Impact Initiative, we have certified 106 social enterprises who are ready to supply goods and services into supply chains. So this is not a consumer play. This is organisations who deliver goods and services into corporate, local and central government supply chains. So that's about a $650 billion slice of the pie. And we want to be able to ensure that we have capable and ready social enterprises that can deliver goods to customers or to buyers. So on that buyer side, we have 13 large corporates and government agencies who are registered as forward buyers. Their combined expenditure, and I think this number is is slightly outdated because we've just had a few new ones join, where they are purchasing over $20 billion of goods and services to make their businesses run. So any percentage of that is a good number that goes towards social enterprise. And I think the most important thing we've learned in this space is a lot of it is around capability on both sides. You've got to build up the capability of buyers to be able to understand and value social and environmental outcomes that they can purchase with the goods and services they need. But you've also got to build up the capability of suppliers so they can enter into scaling opportunities that the buyers need, and particularly important when you think things like infrastructure, construction builds. These are very, very large capital expenditures that we want social enterprise to be a part of a supply chain. So a lot of work going on, and particularly a lot of work with central government. In the impact investing space, this is another key lever, is that all businesses need access to capital, and it's really important in the impact investing space where impact is valued alongside that financial return. So through this program, the Impact Initiative, it has been able to support 2 rounds of the Impact Investment Readiness program, whereby those organisations who are looking to raise capital in whatever form that capital may be at, they get the support that they need through a grant to be able to get the it might be professional support around legal structures, or it might be around marketing and comms, it might be accountants, it might be creating investment memorandums, whatever it may be that they need, they can access a grant in order to be able to progress that investment opportunity. And we've had some significant success in this just in the last year. As an example, we had one organisation which actually announced their investment this morning, that I heard on the radio and kind of squealed a little bit when I heard it. So they received $30,000 of an investment readiness grant, and they just announced a $6 million capital raise. And that capital raise came from new investors into the impact investing space. So ACC was one of those investors, as well as a KiwiSaver. So these are things that demonstrate that our impact investing sector is growing, and it's been really great to have the support of the Impact Initiative program to be able to enable the access of and the support for grants through that process. So just moving through the other key pillars, capability building has been a really important part of this. We've known for a long time that not only is it really important as you start a social enterprise, that you have access to support around building a good business, but you also have support in building an impactful business. So that's a lot of the work that we've done is create impact tools and resources. We've tested access to global platforms like the Social Shifters online platform that didn't quite meet the needs of an Aotearoa New Zealand social enterprise sector, and we're now, we continue to work with government, particularly business.gov.nz, to make tools as readily available as possible to individuals and enterprises that are in the start well space. We also did a pilot, which many of you are on the call now who participated in that, which looked at a regional hubs pilot. So bringing together those intermediaries and support organisations who are deeply connected to their own communities to be able to not only share and learn from each other, but really help us understand, the differences that exist right across Aotearoa New Zealand, and how could tools and services be available, be improved, and learn from the unique conditions right across, and particularly in regional New Zealand. So that was a really great pilot. We certainly learned a lot from it, and we're able to understand what are the barriers, particularly that regional community groups face when providing capability to their own communities themselves. We also did a lot of work around the theory of change or impact model space, and piloted the use of tools directly with social enterprises to help them articulate their impact, and particularly align it to government priorities. So that was work around the waste space, mental health, and whānau outcomes. And what that did is help government understand the power of social enterprise, and how with the good use of impact modelling can you start to see the link between activities and the long-term impact that social enterprises delivers to our communities and to our environment. As Matthew mentioned, lots of sector engagement. We had a great event at the Wellington Zoo. We also had a large number of consistently fantastic and increasingly good and challenging conversations through our sector working group and kitchen table talks that took place. We were also able, it seems like so long ago now, we were also able to attend the Social Enterprise World Forum in Edinburgh to really reflect back on what was the outcomes from hosting the Social Enterprise World Forum in Christchurch the year before. And there was a number, I think it was 85 New Zealanders that went on that, and we were very lucky to not only be able to support that through this program, but also through a separate grant program that the government were able to release, so that the minister at the time, Penny Henare, was surrounded particularly by young entrepreneurs from the Māori and Pacifica space, so really to represent the uniqueness of Aotearoa New Zealand social enterprise sector. We did a lot of reports, and I'm sure some of you have read those. We are very, very proud of all of them, but they also, when we launched these reports, it helped us to be able to see the road forward. So the part of a larger whole, really, and if you haven't read it, I would absolutely recommend, and we'll send a link to all of these reports, but I would really recommend that one. That was done by one of New Zealand's best social entrepreneurs, a guy called Billy Matheson, who looked at the history of social enterprise in New Zealand and started to really help us understand the role that social enterprise has, not only today, but also how can we learn from the past and be able to apply that to the future. So it is a fantastic report and gives you a really good insight into the journey that has led us today from a social enterprise sector. We also did other reports, and some of you are those authors, those co-authors are on the call today, where we focused on different components and levers that are required to grow a thriving social enterprise sector. So legal structures, the impact investing sector, and of course the business of impact, which is focused on impact models and how do you articulate your impact, particularly through a government lens. So all powerful parts of the story, and what we were able to do is introduce those pieces of research, particularly to government agencies, to get them to understand the power that the social enterprise sector can deliver for government. So definitely worth a read if you have some time. So that led us to our final report, which we were very proud to deliver through to a number of ministers over the last couple of weeks. This report is the summary, basically, of all the work that we've done. It has 5 recommendation areas, which cover 15 recommendations, 10 white papers. So if you go into, well, it's a pretty concise document, you can link through to some pretty detailed white papers, which really step out the evidence behind the recommendations and what the recommendations can lead to, what change would occur if those recommendations are brought into life by government. And so it is a summary report, but it's a pretty good summary of a 3-year, pretty full-on 3-year piece of work that many people on this call and many others have been involved in. So we're very proud of where we are now, and we are, it's now about also looking forward and being able to keep up the momentum of the work that we've all done, and particularly many on this call have done well before this 3-year program began.
So thanks, Lou. So what we thought we'd do is just run through the recommendations. We won't do this in absolute detail because you can read it, and we want to get to having a discussion and any questions you might have. So so we'll just go through them at a fairly high level. But basically, there's 5, as Lou said, there's 5 recommendation areas, 15 recommendations within those 5 categories. So we'll just blast through them pretty fast. The first one is social procurement, and social procurement's a massive lever for change, as many of you will appreciate. If you've got a market and it's about $660 billion is spent in New Zealand by corporates and government buying stuff. So if they buy social, then clearly that's a good deal of impact that could be had. So the first 2 recommendations in relation to this are connected. They're saying that government has the procurement rules, they have broader outcome desires, the wellbeing budgets, all those sorts of things feed into that. That they're needing help, or they need some coordination across all the government agencies to help everyone implement all those rules and those ideas that has been set at a high level, but just to help internally those ministries and give them support and leadership in there. And then the third one is connected to things like the Forward Social Procurement Program, or Āmatai, those intermediaries that can help broker and help make it easy for the corporates and government to buy from social and impact enterprises or Māori and Pacifica enterprises, and try and make that easier for buyers and suppliers. Yeah, stuff about that.
The next area is around impact itself. So what we want to do is we want government to really embrace taking an impact-focused approach. We want them to be able to measure, manage and maximise the positive environmental and social outcomes that they can achieve, and a big part of that is to develop and implement a set of consistent outcome indicators that can be used to measure and improve impact. That's really important when you think about levers like social procurement. Often what we see, and we will all have examples of this, is that if we are tendering or having a conversation with a government, central or local government agency, and we're asked to articulate how we are contributing to broader outcomes, without consistent indicators of what that means, there is a lot of movement in that. There is a lot of uncertainty about how you respond to that. So there's a huge opportunity for government to really embrace outcome indicators and be able to work with the sector, both the social enterprise, community enterprise, and impact enterprise sector, but also the wider economy, to implement those consistent ways of measuring outcomes. We want government to also to be able to gather and share relevant data. Government, as many of you will know, sits on a huge amount of data, and often they use that data for really important things like setting policy, etc. But the power of that data sitting in the hands of social enterprises, could be groundbreaking. If we understand as social entrepreneurs and enterprises where our impact or what change can occur because of our activities in the impact space, and we have access to data to help us to tell that, it means that we can start to really demonstrate the value that social enterprises can contribute to government goals. And another opportunity, and this is something that I'm pretty passionate about, is demonstrating to government the power of a social enterprise model. The fact that government can enable and ensure that social enterprise as a model of delivering outcomes is a really important tool for their own toolbox, not just to enable the conditions for social enterprises to thrive, but really to think about social enterprise as a model of delivery in their own activity. And that's slowly starting to be inspiring to some government agencies, but we really want social enterprise as a model to also be adopted and used within government as well. Going into the next phase, impact investing, there is a significant opportunity for government to continue to stimulate the impact investing sector, to enable co-investment with the sector. Sorry, my lights just popped on. I must have moved my hand. Yeah. But I didn't suddenly just turn on a big light. It's happening here in the room, which is great. But there is a huge opportunity for government to take a role in co-investing. Obviously, they did that 2 budgets ago through the creation of the Green Investment Finance Company, and it was fantastic to see in last week's budget additional investment into that organisation. But that's only part of it. That's only in the green space. So we're really challenging government to think bigger and to think about where can co-investment and acceleration of the impact investing sector happen by their involvement within it. We want them to be able to increase the scale of the impact investment readiness program, so that they can, so that more enterprises can access grants in order to get the support that they need to raise capital. And we also are significantly endorsing the Centre for Sustainable Finance that is under development through the Ākina circle. And that, if you don't know about that, that is a significant opportunity for us to transform our finance system to not only get us to a zero carbon future, but also to address financial hardship, and particularly to enable financial inclusion. There is alignment with these measures and the roadmap to sustainable finance that the Ākina circle has delivered last year. I will continue, Matthew. I've lost the numbers.
Yeah, no, you're good. Just this last one, there's some capability. Yeah,
great. So tools and support. This is, an opportunity for us to continue to create, and when I say we, for government, to continue to create the tools and resources needed for social enterprises to start and particularly unlock the power of their impact. So we want to make sure that if government is doing anything in that early stage, starting stage, that they take into account not only the tools to create a financially sustainable business, but also alongside that, we want them to be able to create and continue to create and make accessible tools for impact enterprises to begin. We want there to be continued guidance and education in the legal structure space. And we did a lot of work with government, and Stephen and others are on the call today who supported that, where we looked very, very hard at a new legal structure for social enterprise. As you can imagine, changing the Companies Act is a very, very big exercise, and where we have got to is that while that may be an option in the future, we really need to focus on the education and enabling organisations to understand how they can protect mission, how they can govern impact, but within our current legal structures to be able to then determine is there other activity or other regulation or legislation change that we may do in the future. We're not quite there yet in order to be able to justify the significant investment required in order to change something like the Companies Act. But we really think there is a huge opportunity to continue to educate on how you govern and protect mission in the current legal structures that we have. We also want to be able to, we're challenging government to provide targeted funding to intermediaries and social enterprise networks, particularly those who are deeply connected to their own communities, so that we not only build capability, but we have a place-based support and collaboration network that are able to work together. And often the biggest barrier to that is funding. So our challenge to government is to unlock the funding in order for those locally based, place-based intermediaries to be able to continue to support the great work that's coming out of their own communities. I'll pass back to you, Matthew.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, Roger. That's a good outcome for that one. So, folks, you'll be aware that clearly social enterprise has been in New Zealand for a very, very long time, and we've got some timelines on the Impact Initiative website and in the report about that. And in Billy's report that Lou mentioned, there was what was it called, the Community Employment Group that was going right up to about 2005, and there was a lot of investment into community enterprise, social enterprise at that stage, around about $21 million per year. That all finished around about 2005. So from that point through to when this program started, government participation in our sector was pretty minimal in an overt way. So that's why this program, when it started, was greeted with such excitement, particularly from some of the people who've been around a bit longer than me. And have seen the history and going, yep, here's our chance to get back in a conversation with government. So out of this program, what we're asking government and suggesting to them is that this program was done under DIA. It could have been MB or it could have been MSD, and that's the issue, isn't it, with social enterprise and impact enterprises? Where does it sit? And we interact with a whole bunch of agencies in the Zero Waste Network. We deal a lot with MFE, and so we've suggested to the government, look, we think stating where the home is for social enterprise would be a very good first step. And our suggestion is that it's with MB, given that we are enterprises, primarily businesses that are obviously trying to do social and environmental good. So that's the first thing, get a home for social enterprise in the government landscape. And then the next one is, let's keep the conversation going. Let's make it easy for all the pathway for practitioners and all of us here working in the sector to keep talking with government. And so this sector leadership group or sector working group has been successful. There's been a bunch of organisations. We've all got along, nobody's throwing their toys out, and there's been no big punch-ups. So clearly we function well as a sector. So let's keep that going, a coalition of the willing, of leadership organisations that government can easily interact with, and we can feed in perspectives. So taking the COVID example, if government wants to know what the social enterprise sector or community enterprise, multi-enterprise sector can offer and can do, then there's a group there that can instantly go out to networks and get that feedback for them. So we've asked for some funding and participation from government in a sector leadership group. So what now? What happens next? The program is finished. It finished officially on the 31st of March. There's a bunch of us that have still been meeting. That sector working group has still been meeting, and you know, you don't just finish these sorts of things after you've spent 3 years working on them. You're trying to do what you can to give those recommendations the best chance of success. So so we've been working away on that framework, but yeah, officially the program's finished, and the mandate now sits with government to decide what it's going to do. The stuff that will carry on, however, is that the Ākina social procurement program forward is carrying on, and it's become self-sustaining, and so that can keep going. It's doing well. We have a MOU with our good friends at Āmātai to support each other, and they're very complementary, those two programs. So that'll carry on. The Impact Investment Readiness Grant program will carry on as well, and you'll keep an eye out for that and those announcements of how to apply for that if it's relevant. Then the community-led enterprise development network is, I believe, will have maybe have a different name in the future, but it's this network of a bunch of agencies around Aotearoa that are working, Barry's involved in that are working to try to support the growth of social enterprise in their areas, and that's carrying on, and in fact thriving. It seems to be going from strength to strength. So and then the last one is, yeah, this work to try to get the sector leadership group up and running is you know, we're going to carry on and see what we can do there. Yeah, we now wait a little bit. We wait, but we don't wait. We keep officially we're waiting now for government to feedback to us and say, okay, this is what they're going to do. The ball is very squarely in their court, but at the same point, clearly we're trying to encourage things along wherever we can behind the scenes. So so any reports, all the stuff we've mentioned today, I also put it in the chat there before. It's all on the Impact Initiative. That's not going anywhere. That website, it will stay current and available for the next year at least. So you can grab things off there. I guess just a final comment before we open up the floor to any questions is just to acknowledge, yeah, the people that have contributed and the ones that are on the call today, and just looking at these names and how many of you have either directly through the sector working group or working on reports or hosting events or just given us words of encouragement, which have been greatly appreciated and needed, has been very great. Yeah, very grateful. DIA have been wonderful to work with, and as I say, the ministers, the 3 ministers we had, have been great as well. So we feel fortunate, and hopefully you agree that the outcomes of make it all worthwhile. So folks, I haven't found a group of social entrepreneurs yet who don't have an opinion about something or have something that they want to say, and so I'm anticipating that'll be the case with this group as well. So so would like to open it up. So if you raise your, you know, on the Zoom, you've got that raise hand function, which you can do, and just yeah, raise your hand and we can and then unmute and we can see or if any questions or comments anyone has. Everyone's looking for the raise hand function. If you go to reactions down the bottom, there's a raise hand and it will look like that. Cliff. Oh, I just unmute Cliff and then you'll be away.
Kia ora, kia ora. Never known to be shy, so I thought I'd just open up. I'm sure there's lots of people who want to say things, but I thought if I don't get in, I might get missed out, so I thought I'd give it a go. Hey, I suppose the first thing I'd just like to say is that thank Lou and Matthew, because there was a lot of people involved with the project and put a lot of effort into it, especially Ākina staff, because they were the drivers. They were the ones that did all the mahi behind the meetings and stuff like that. So just thank you to them. And I think the reality is, like you said, Matthew, we finished in March. So what are we here for? We're here because it doesn't matter if it's March, April, May, June, July, 2001, 2003. We actually are all involved and committed with this, have been for a long time, and will continue to. And I think that's the thing, you know, that this hasn't just started around the 3-year project, and it won't stop at the completion of this. Whether government gets involved or not and picks up our recommendations, the whole thing continues in some form, because we're all committed to what we're doing. And it's not just about this program, it's about quite radical change in the most peaceful way possible. But we know that the whole world needs radical change, and not just change anymore. And so there's an element of being the conservative bunch that present that to government, so that everyone's comfortable about dealing with that change. And I think we're able to do that as this bunch of people, with all would love to jump up and down and say, you've got to change tomorrow. But the delivery was one that everyone was able to digest and participate with, that we work with within government. And let's face it, they are a conservative bunch of people, because they have to be government. And so I felt that that's one of the biggest things, that the grouping was really important. And I'm not talking about what has happened, I'm talking about going forward now. I'm saying whatever we try to achieve, I think this has been a good example of the approach, whoever's doing it, you know, that within our sector. If we want to make progress, we've got to be firm but fair, and approach the people we're trying to change in a way that they can deal with it. So it was really good working with them. I just like to say that, you know, that the working on here, just for people who weren't maybe as close, from day one, the relationship with the 2 primary organisations, Ākina and CENT, who were representing at that point, and still are, the people from the community sector on that grouping, was all about, you know, how we work together. And there was no, it was really based on trust, high level of trust. And that's what got it going really fast. You know, things happen really fast. And I think we've got to be careful about, you know, like in some ways, one of the things we dealt with right in the very beginning was, who do we speak for? We were asking ourselves that same question. And then we had to trust our own judgment a bit there, that we were all there for the right reasons, and we might not always get it right, but overall our purpose was to get things moving and not sit at the end of 3 years and not have achieved something. And so there's always that risk of having a smaller group representing the whole, that, and you know, and that's what we were charged with in a sense, that we said right from the beginning, we don't represent the whole, we just represent ourselves and the organisations we work with, and our opinion on what is needed. And I think that's really important, because it's really hard to represent everybody, and so don't try to. So that was the start of it. And I think that going forward, I think that we keep some of those basic ethics in place. Whatever happens, it's going to be really important. And so I suppose for me, getting to where we go from here, if we're successful and some of those recommendations are actually acted on by government, the things that will really confront us, as whether we're a private business at one end, trying to do some good stuff, or a community enterprise, Māori enterprise, Polynesia, a Pacifica enterprise at the other end, just trying to survive for their communities, survive in those areas. It's about, the opportunities won't be small, they'll be big opportunities. And to actually deal with those big opportunities requires actually, Moshe, a big change in our view on who we are and how we operate. And I think that most organisations, when we talk to them, even our own, like the Zero Waste Network and people like that, the first response of some opportunity comes if we haven't got the capacity to take that opportunity on currently. And I think the thing that's going to really make the difference is accepting that, and accepting what is the way of dealing with it going forward. And that's about changing the way and where we do things and who we employ, because we're usually pretty well at our max on our own capacity to do what we're currently doing, and then take on something else. We've got to look at the ways who we employ to do that next. And it's not always going to be a person that's spent a lifetime committed to the cause. It might be just a really good person with a good ethic who's good at management. And that'll create the opportunities to go forward, because I think if government picks this up, there'll be quite big opportunities, and a lot of organisations won't have that capacity. So it's about joint ventures, working together, and collectively moving forward. But we're going to have to bring in people from outside our working groups to be our management, I would suggest. And we've started to see that around the place where people have taken on bigger contracts. They've had to go outside, and what happens? Those good managers with good ethics become the biggest advocates for the cause within a very short period of time, because they want a job, they also want to do something worthwhile. So I'm just saying that's mostly, I'll cut it off there, but I think going into the future, we will get opportunities, and is being prepared for those.
Thanks, Cliff. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you. Kia ora, everyone. Great presentation. Thank you to you, Lou and Matthew, and all of the team behind the scenes who did so much work. My question, recognizing all the good that's come from the initiative, I'm just wondering if we could go in a time machine back, what would we tell ourselves 3 years ago? And in a way that, like, from going forward, how can we learn from the engagement that we've had? All the positives have been amazing, but what do we wish that we knew back then? You know, like, are reports the most effective way? Like, think of that one that we did on legal structures. Like, was that the best way? Would it have been better to try to have a brainstorming conference or get together around a whiteboard? I always like to take these moments, I guess, to think, like, how can we learn from this? Because as Cliff says, it's going to be an ongoing journey. We're going to continue to engage. So I'm just curious for any reflections you have on, yeah, what could we do even going forward? What have we learned to be able to engage more and be able to have more connection? Any thoughts or reflections? If not, that's fine too. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Stephen, and I expect no less from you when you open your mouth to ask a question. I think if I reflect back and think, the conversations we were having 3 years ago with a brand new government, a government that didn't expect to be government, a government that had the hopes pinned on everyone, and if we could go back, I would say that it's easier to have an established government who already understands social enterprise in order to drive the outcomes that social enterprise need. We educated on what was social enterprise for about 18 months of the program. To start now with an educated public service with educated ministers means that you can have much faster action. So I would, I think the pre-education, the the work in the lead up, it would have been great to actually have more time to be able to do that, and then get stuck in to the delivery bit. It's important to recognise we worked across 14 agencies throughout this program. Often we would have meetings, and every 2 or 3 months, new people would pop up. When officials change or ministerial priorities shifted, whatever it might be, and that meant that things took a lot longer than what we had hoped, because we had to spend a lot of the time educating and then sometimes aggravating to be able to get the outcomes that we were looking for, and no one expected COVID to happen either. So I think that with hindsight, could we have done things differently? Absolutely yes. Could we have driven things maybe through different ministerial priorities as we learned and evolved from them? Absolutely, we could have. But I think that given the circumstances that we were in with a brand new government who had to learn how to be a government for probably their first 2 years, that was a significant constraint in how quickly we could move or get government to move, I think.
Lou, there's a question there from Anya about what's the mood around the New Zealand budget announcement and where we fit in as a sector. Anyone got a response to that? Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I think we often think about success being an outcome on the 17th or 20th of May every year, right? You succeed if you get a budget bid, and a lot of the opportunities that we see, and part of the recommendations don't require access to a significant amount of money assigned or creation of different programs, etc. A lot of them are changes within the way government work, and I use social procurement as a great example. There is that government procurement does not need a budget bid, because government procurement is the budget bid process. We need impact to be valued and outcomes to be really clear within the way government procure. Every year we see the budget announcement coming through, and often that's the top of the iceberg. That is literally the 3% of new spend that is coming through. You've got 97% of government money, which is just allocated every year in the same way. That's where we want to see big change, and that's where investment and procurement outcomes are linked to impact is the real opportunity for social enterprise. So while we didn't expect and we didn't ask for outcomes through the budget process this year, I think there is real hope and signals from government, particularly in the procurement space and the investment space, to actually create or continue to create the conditions for social enterprise to thrive. So I hope I answered that question. All right.
Then this is a great question. I have no idea what the answer is, but it's wonderful from Ākina about that. And the report talks about $1.7 billion being contributed to GDP by social enterprises, presumably globally. Is that right? And then which is less than 1% of total GDP. So are there global comparators of this GDP contribution, and hence the business case to focus more on this, e.g. in Singapore or other Scandinavian countries? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly a lot of the conversation that we have in things like the global, the Social Enterprise World Forum is exactly this challenge, right? We don't necessarily know the size of the social enterprise sector, because there isn't a button you can press in order to identify yourself as a social enterprise when you are engaging at an economic level. Whether you are creating a new entity or whether you are engaging in transactional activities with government. So, and that's the same in every country. Some countries have legal structures for social enterprises, but they're not adopted well by social enterprises, because often they come with limitations and regulation that is maybe not the best opportunity for social enterprises to thrive. And South Korea, the UK is good examples of that. So I think that the opportunity that we have is, how do we continue to drive the understanding and acceptance that a thriving economy needs a thriving social enterprise sector within it, and using examples and reports and insights from other countries to help us do that, but also recognising our uniqueness in Aotearoa New Zealand. Many organisations use the methods of social enterprise, but would never call themselves social enterprises. And so we don't want to have a label if that label isn't right for everyone. If you want to call yourself an impact enterprise or a Māori enterprise or a Pacific enterprise, whatever it might be that is right for you, then absolutely go for it. So it's how we really focus not on the entity or the name of the entity, but the impact that the entity is delivering. And that, I think, is something that we can all do in our conversations and engagement with government, is to demonstrate the long-term impact that can be achieved by social enterprises or impact-driven organisations to deliver to what our societies and our planet need, not necessarily just to the government of the day and their priorities.
Which it feeds in very nicely to Show's point there about the development of a peak body, and that was outside the scope of this work, and it'll be interesting to see if that happens one day. But to Lou's point there, it's of what, is it if there isn't a legal agreed definition for social enterprise, is it a peak body for that, or is it, where does Māori and Pacific enterprise fit, community enterprise, everything? So we didn't feel that that was an area for this program to go into, but certainly we may see that emerge. Others may decide to take it forward in the future. Cliff, I see you've got your hand up.
Well, just based around that question before about the financial impact, one of the things that could be done, though, which would be interesting anyway, and it's most likely relatively easy to quantify, is some of the services that that currently get supplied to the community now which have become mainstream and which started through community initiatives. And I can think of a couple myself that are now quite large scale activities. And that's one is like waste minimisation, definitely came out of the community sector in New Zealand. And how big is the recycling industry in New Zealand now, you know? Because it's not just done by community enterprises, but definitely the influencing of what could happen came out of that. The other is the insulation initiative. That is just commonplace in New Zealand, been for 15 years. Well, that was community initiative from the beginning. One, the research that was done through dedicated people in the medical profession, and then small community groups taking on the challenge to do that. And now it's turned into a massive industry. Like they just released the budgets, it's $60 million a year, and has been for most of 15 years, something like that. So that's a massive activity that not only is good for the community, good for the environment, but is also good for economics for the whole country. And there'll be others, that's just two that we work within, but there'll be other initiatives that have actually grown into mainstream activities based on community activity. So it's all about, I think that's as much as what we're really about, bringing about change, not just in our backyard. And I think that the word impact is defined by not doing something great in your own backyard, but getting that great idea and spreading across the whole country or the planet, you know, and you're really having impact. And I think we all learned that from the beginning when we started playing around with names, that was what we defined impact as.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cliff. Just wary of the time, we've got just a couple of minutes left. So if there is any last quick question, I'm happy to take that. And then what we'll do is just finish off and make sure that everybody is sent round the link as well as a wee video to celebrate the end of the program, which we'll share with you also. So if you do have a last question, either take yourself on mute and yell it out or pop your hand up.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Yeah. Actually, speak now or don't hold your peace. Contact me if you have any questions in the future. But okay, well, so thanks very much, folks. Thanks for joining us and for your interest. It has been heartening, and appreciate the support and appreciate the support going forward, which I know will remain. There is a video, as Lou said, that we'll share for you to watch, just a 3-minute one of the final presentation of the recommendations to government, so you'll get that, and I encourage you to watch it. But go well with your mahi and wherever you are in the country, and thank you for all that you do and have done. I'll leave Lou to give us a final karakia to send us on our way for the day.
Let me share my screen again. Oh, there's Shay in the video. I nearly played the video there. So hold on, I've just got to move my screen. So yeah, just to reconfirm, thank you all for taking part, not only in this webinar, but also for all of the work that you've done for the last 3 years as the Impact Initiative evolved, but also for many of you prior to that as well. We walk in the shadow of the giants, and we are very lucky to live in a country where social enterprise is really deeply embedded in our economic success. So on that note, I'd like to and maybe Ed, if you can also join with me in this karakia to farewell us and wish us well for the rest of the day. Ready, Ed?
I'm ready.
We're ready, let's go.
Ko te pai tāwhiti, whaia kia tata. Ko te pai tata, ko te pai tata, whakamaua kia tina. Hunie, huie, tai kia.
Kia ora,
Kia ora,
everyone. Mā te wā, and do look out for an email with all of the detail on it. And as Matthew said, more than happy at any time to connect with you directly and any other questions that you might have. Thanks all very much for joining.